Hello, my name is Lee. This is my YouTube channel. And what I'm going to do today is something a little different than what I usually do, where I kind of just simulate these football games using Pro Strategy Football 2026, and I upload them as they are without any commentary. Um, I'm going to start to um, add some commentary here and there now that I've got I think I've got this technology figured out. But I also wanted to, because I haven't really been doing a lot of explaining, obviously, without the commentary. Um, it's all been point and click and silence and just the sounds of the game that you've been hearing. I want to be able to kind of walk everyone through the historic career mode within Pro Strategy Football 2026 and explain kind of how that works and and what the results of my simulation has been so far. Let me first, I'm going to adjust some things here on the settings. I think I had these set up in a way where they weren't going to be too loud during the game. So we're going to go ahead and I think that's good. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Historic Careers. And I'm in season 17 right now. I've only really kind of paid attention or sort of slow simmed, meaning I've watched a single game each week for starting with the 1966 season. I figured I would focus on the Super Bowl era and kind of work my way up. So I'm only about 2 seasons in, but I do have historical data going back to 1951. And the reason why I started in 1951 is because within this game, which is an awesome game, by the way, that was developed by Kerry Batts, in this feature, he's introduced uh, this historic career mode, which allows you to basically take the single seasons for each NFL year and upload them at the end of each season and basically play a career without, you're not doing any of the off-season stuff, you're not doing any drafting, any trading, any swapping of players, anything like that, waves or free agent signings, but you're basically just taking those teams as they were for that particular season, and you're continuing to play through each season one after the other. And what I did was I started in 1951. The reason I could have gone back to 1940. That's the oldest season that was created. And the reason I didn't go back to the 1940s because as of yet there is not the ability um, uh, to remove a team, right? And so in the 1940s there were a couple seasons during World War II. I think it was 43 and 44 where the Steelers in particular had decided to basically cease to exist as a team. Um, and combined with one year it was the Cardinals, Chicago Cardinals. They were the Card Pit was the name of the team, and then they also the next year, or it might have been vice versa, but they merged with the Philadelphia Eagles and were known as the Steagles. And I believe the Cleveland Rams also took a break during those 2 seasons. So for that reason, we're unable to bring those teams back. It becomes an issue again in the 90s with the Cleveland Browns going to Baltimore um, and then coming back in 1999. That created a whole other issue that we'll have to confront when we get there. But what the bottom line there is that the old Browns and the new Browns are going to be two separate franchises. Basically, the Ravens are going to continue the Browns' legacy in this simulation. So a little bit different from real life, but that's okay. This is a historical reimagining of history. So this is my 67th season. I played through the regular season. I've got we'll call them the conference championships, but they're really the league championships, the AFL and the NFL. Those matchups are all set. And real quick, I'll just show you the standings. A little bit different. Some cases a lot different than real life. We had some teams that really sort of overperformed, I guess you could say, versus real life, and then teams that obviously underperformed. The Redskins, they're at the top of the Capital Division of the Eastern Conference of the NFL. They were the big overperformers there. Really, that was mostly because of Sonny Jurgensen and the offense of the Redskins. They did great during the regular season and were able to capture the division title, beating out Dallas and Philadelphia. Cleveland pretty much did what they did in real life, capturing the Century Division. The Central and the Coastal Divisions were won by the Bears and Colts, respectively. The Bears beating out the Packers, who in the total scope of the career, the Packers have played really, really well, and they won, I believe, 5 out of the 6 league championships from 1960 to 65. They were a juggernaut, and were really great. And but 66 and 67 hasn't really been that way. And the Bears obviously overperforming in 67. They're going 10-2-2, and really being the second best team in the NFL for that season. Baltimore beat out Los Angeles just like they did in real life. Moving to the AFL, you've got the Jets ahead of the Houston Oilers, which is a little bit different than real life, obviously. The Oilers were the Eastern Conference Finals, or Eastern Conference champions, in 1967. And in my simulated replay, the Jets came out on top. So they're peaking about a year ahead of where they did in real life. And they will face the Oakland Raiders, their arch rivals, in the AFL Championship game. So that should be cool. Real quick, I'll show you the history. Obviously, we're still in the playoffs, so 67 has not been finalized yet. But starting in 66, we had the Super Bowl I between the Cowboys and the Jets. Again, a little bit different than real life, obviously. The Cowboys beat out the Packers in the NFL Championship in my simulation. And the Jets, I believe they beat out the Chiefs. I can look at it. But the Super Bowl itself was an overtime game where Dallas beat the Jets on a touchdown in overtime. Game was tied at 10, and Dan Reeves, who was the MVP of the ball game, actually ended up scoring that winning touchdown. So look at that real quick here. It was a 12-yard touchdown run, and prior to that, he had a pass reception from. We'll show you that too here. So this was the big play in overtime that set things up. Don Meredith throwing it out to Dan Reeves. Reeves getting loose down the sidelines and almost outrunning the Jets, but is taken down from behind after a 51-yard gain. And then, the very next play, I believe, he went off left tackle for a 12-yard touchdown run. And the Cowboys won the first Super Bowl. So, and if you're wondering why they're wearing their cursed blue jerseys, which I always liked, it's because back then the Super Bowl designated home team. There was always a designated home team and a designated away team. And in the first Super Bowl, the NFL team was the designated home team, and the home team was always required to wear their dark jerseys. And that's why the Cowboys actually wore blue in Super Bowl V against the Colts. That rule didn't change until I believe it was later in the 70s. It might have been 78, and it was the Cowboys, I think, that lobbied the league for that change. Otherwise, they would have been wearing blue jerseys against the Steelers in that Super Bowl rematch in 13. So interesting little bit of useless trivia there for you. So nevertheless, that's what happened in 66. And you could do this for every season, right? You can go back, you can retain the highlights and everything, and you can go back and basically almost look at a complete replay of the previous season. You can look at every highlight, every play from any game you want. I mentioned the Packers, how much of a dynasty they were prior to the Super Bowl year. of '66. Yeah, they beat the Browns 2 years in a row, '64 and '65. They beat the Giants 3 years in a row, '61 to '63. They faced the Eagles in '60, just like in real life, but unlike in real life, they won that game. I believe that was in Green Bay too. It was not in Philadelphia, I believe. And then prior to that, you can see the '50s. Again, pretty much the same teams that dominated during the '50s dominated in my simulation. One little exception, again, was the Packers. The Packers in '55 getting to the NFL Championship a little bit ahead of time for them. And were taken care of by the Giants that year. Giants were very good, very prominent franchise in the '50s. Obviously in the '60s too, but ran into the Packers 3 years in a row. Lions had a rough go of it. You can see they're losing 3 straight championship games to 3 different teams. And the very first championship game I had was the Rams beating the Browns in '51, just like they did in real life. A little bit more lopsided than real life, but nevertheless, same result. Norm Van Brocklin, the MVP. So, pretty cool stuff. You can click on the teams. You can look at, how many wins each team has. The most wins so far since '51 in my replay is the Browns, followed by the Packers. Let's see what else. We can look at career leaders, and you can look at, for yards passing. John Unitas is the all-time leading passer as of 1967. Let's see, rushing, total yards, no surprise there, Jim Brown. So, I mean, people talk about this game, and I love this game. I think it's fair to say that pro strategy football is not going to give you accurate results every single time, according to the way history would reflect. That's because it's not a true number cruncher in the same manner as an action PC or Second and 10, Stratomatic, those types of games, which I love, by the way. But those aren't those aren't the same type of game that this is. This game is ratings based for the most part. Each player or each position has certain attributes that are rated from 1 to 9, and that's how the teams are set up. The one exception is special teams. Special teams is actually based on stats. So the results are probably as close to accurate as you can get. Although, again, it's just at the end of the day, it still comes down to virtual dice rolls in terms of how the results are calculated, which is no different than those number crunchers. So anyway, nice little feature there. You can also look at teams' history. This is another thing I really, really like. If I want to look at the Bears, for example, I can look at their team history, click on that, and then you can see how they did each year. You can see the Bears missed the playoffs every single year, except for, even though that says missed playoffs, they're actually in the playoffs. So I don't know why it says that, but nevertheless, they have not been a great team until now. Going back to '51 until the current season. You can look at team versus team records. You can look how they do against everybody else. I thought there was a way to look at individual players as well. I think there's a way to do that. Individual players per team, looking at the total. For example, you can look up if I wanted to look at the Bears, I could look at here it is. If I could look at player stats, well, that's for '67. I thought there was a way to look at their all-time stats for individual player. Maybe this is it. Here it is. Okay. So if I click on menu and I go to players, this is really cool. So you can look at passing all time for the Bears, and you can basically see who has the most yards passing all time. Now, this is only from '51 to '67. This is going to look really cool when I get into the modern era, if I ever get that far. Right? So I think it's really cool. Rushing, all-time leading rusher, Rick Caceres. Obviously, Gale Sayers is gaining on him, although Gale Sayers had a very short career, as we all know. I believe he played up to 69, and then injuries shortened his career. So we'll see whether he can catch um, that number there that Caceres has. But you can do this with every team. It's really cool. Um, Defense, receiving, special teams, all those different categories can be looked at. So that's how things look there. The conference championships, or I guess we'll call them the league championship games, are set. You can see both games are going to be affected greatly by the weather. Um, uh, Somehow it's going to be -9 degrees in Chicago, which probably isn't unheard of for late December and January. I can say that based on experience because I happen to live in the Chicago area. That's probably about right. Not all the time, but it can get that cold. So that's going to be a brutal game for the Redskins and Bears. But look at this one. Somehow it's 51 degrees in New York, but it's going to be pouring rain and strong wind. So weather's going to be a factor in that game as well. So I'm going to go ahead and tee these up. First one we'll do is the Raiders and the Jets. And we'll go ahead and set that up to watch. Boy, yeah, it's really raining there. Compare the teams. Overall rating, the Raiders are on paper going to be a higher rated team. I would assume that means they're probably going to be the favorites, although um, the home team usually does have about a 3 to 4 point um, credit in their favor. So all things being equal, you'll usually find that the home team will be favored by 3 or 4 points. Here, I don't think things are equal, so perhaps it'll be a little bit closer than that, with the Raiders possibly being a slight favorite. Let's go ahead and see what it says. If we run 100 simulations, yep, just what I thought. Raiders favored by 3. Over under is 36, so not too high scoring, but not necessarily low scoring either. But rain will definitely be a factor there. It's interesting. The background photo actually looks like an old game between these two teams, and on a relatively muddy field. So hey, look at that. So let's go ahead and get this started. We're going to watch live. And I'm going to keep my commentary to a minimum here because I'm not real good at this. So I'm just going to let the game play out the way I have been doing so far. Look at the injuries. The big injury there looks like is Pete Lamons. Now I've noticed that occasionally once you get into the playoffs, sometimes it'll say the player is out or maybe doubtful or probable for a game, but they end up playing sometimes and sometimes they don't. So it really depends, I guess, on the severity of the injury. So we may see Pete Lamons lining up, or we may not. But he's definitely has an injury designation, so we may not see him. So the Jets a little bit weak at tight end going into this game. Let's go ahead and click go, and let's get it started.
Touchback.
And I've got that. Let's set this to 3 seconds, and I'll change the audio. I like Chris's play-by-play, but I've been listening to a lot of it, so no offense, Chris. We're going to try something a little bit different, and we're also going to turn it up a little bit. It's probably a little bit too low. I did lower the referee's voice a bit because that was really loud. Mike in the truck does the referee voice, and he's got a very good broadcasting voice, so his voice really comes through there. All right, here we go.
Touchback. Second down. Third down. injury on the field.
Well, that's a big injury. All right, so the Jets have the ball now. After the Raiders, looks like they went 3 and out. Oh, there's a first down. Bill Mathis. Let me go ahead and check this. There was a flag on the play there, so we'll check that here in just a second. Yeah, let's hear some crowd noise. Probably a little bit more sound there. Not sure why we're not hearing anything. It is completely silent. Okay, well, there's that play again. And penalty on the Jets, so that comes back 3rd and 24. Wow. Well, pass over the middle to Maynard, short of the first down, but got some of that yardage back. Now they're going to punt, 4th down. And that's just going to go out of bounds, it looks like. Good punt there by Curly Johnson, 51 yards. And Giamato's back. Good. Good. I like to see that 0 out there on the field. All right, Raiders get a first down. Run by Clem Daniels off the left side. Lamonica over the middle to Wells. Over midfield into Jets territory. Look at him go. Down inside the 30. Big play of 47 yards from Lamonica to Warren Wells. It's going a little too fast, so let's change this back to 5 seconds so I can keep up with things. Sometimes it goes a little too fast and I can't keep up. All right. I like the fast game, but sometimes I lose track of where I'm at. All right. Pass over the middle to Billy Cannon. So the Raiders look like they're definitely in scoring territory here. Might get the first score of the game off the left side to Hewitt Dixon. Just short of the first down. And here's a big 3rd and short. And they stop him. Pete Benezak going for a 3-yard loss by Verlin Biggs. So the Raiders are going to have to settle for the field goal here. Blanda is 97% from this range, so that was close to an automatic one. And there aren't very many automatic kicks in this game, particularly in the old era. So there you go. George Blanda makes it 3-0 Jets. So I think I'd accidentally muted my mic, so I was talking away, and particularly on that big play that the Raiders did. I totally missed it, so sorry about that. All right, so the Jets now with the ball, and they're faced with a 3rd and long. So far, we're seeing a lot of defense here, which we expect, I guess, because of the weather. And Namath is sacked, so it's going to be 4th down. The Jets are going to have to punt again. Still early on, about a little less than halfway through the first quarter. Raiders sort of winning the field position battle here, and they have a 3-point lead. Excuse me. All right, there's Fred Blitnikoff. I think that's his first catch of the game. Uh-oh. That's not going to work. False start, so that's going to back them up. So what was a 3rd and short is now going to be a 3rd and 6, probably a passing down. Let's see what happens here. And he is sacked. Biggs again coming up with a big play. Gets the sack, and the Raiders are going to need to punt now. Okay, first down pass to Sauer. Tackle by Gus Otto, no relation to Jim Otto. At least not that I'm aware of. Matt Snell gets 2 yards. Second down and 8. And that pass is intercepted. So a big quick pass over the middle, picked off by Willie Brown. So that's a big play, big turnover. And as the first quarter comes to a close here, the Raiders are set up in Jet territory. And that's gonna be the end of the first quarter. So at the end of the first, it's 3-0 Raiders. Right now they've got the advantage there with 89 total yards versus 24 for the Jets. But they're going to face a 3rd down here, 3rd and 7. So that's not going to do it. So a pass completion to Hewitt Dixon, but they're short of the first down. 4th down is another chance here for Blanda. You notice Blanda was the holder and the kicker. It's because he's the backup quarterback. Okay, so the Raiders out ahead 6-0 in the AFL title game. In real life, the Raiders beat the Houston Oilers. I believe it was a pretty lopsided score, if I recall. Not that I was old enough to remember watching it live, but I've seen plenty of highlight films, and I believe it was like 40-7, something like that. And the Raiders would go on to Super Bowl II and play the Packers, and things didn't turn out too well for them. But let's see what happens here. And I mentioned earlier about Lamons being injured. Oh, there he is. He's in the game, so he must be he's recovered enough. And it's a big game, so you always want your starters out there on the field if they can do it. There's an injury, Dave Herman. He may be back. So the Jets come up short again. So definitely a defensive battle so far. Raiders do have 2 field goals, but it's still very, very close. Very close. And LaMonica goes down, sacked by Philbin. Philbin had a big season. He had a lot of sacks. The one thing that's cool about this historic career mode is I've been able to, I created a lot of these seasons myself, but another modder, it was actually Mike in the truck who created most of the 50s. I think he did all the 50s, and I think he did the first half of the 60s. And so we've been doing our best to kind of go back and tweak these to try to get the number one to make certain that ones he created and ones I created are compatible. They're rated similarly, at at least using a similar basis. Um, but also that, well, I kind of lost my train of thought there. Let me just I'm losing track of what's happening with the game here too. Big play there to Fred Bolitnikoff. They're gonna Lamonika's throwing again to Bolitnikoff. Down inside the 10 to the 5. Whoa, first and goal, a 31-yard play. What I was saying earlier, though, well, let's just see what happens here. Looks like Herman's back. So first and goal. And that's a touchdown. Bolitnikoff, he goes to him 3 plays in a row, and he finishes it off with a touchdown pass. And the Raiders now have a commanding lead, 12-0. The one thing I forgot to do, and I hope it doesn't become a factor in this game, is I forgot to switch the rule set for the AFL so that they have the 2-point conversion. That's a big oops on my part. Well, the game's already started, so I guess we can't change that now. And again, I hope that doesn't become a factor, because again, I believe we're down to the 1-point conversion. I believe that's the rule set. I can check that. Let's see, is there a way to check that? Probably not from here. Probably not from there. All right. Well, I'll check another thing here. I was saying earlier about the seasons, and what's cool about this historical career is I get to see how these seasons actually work out, right? There is, um, you know, there's going to be some things that maybe are off, um, and I can go back and tweak those later. And one of those things was in the special teams. I noticed for 1967 that there were probably a little bit too many kickoff and punt returns for touchdowns. And I think it's because when I was rating the players, and I mentioned earlier about how special teams is using the actual stats, the number of times or the chances the player has to score on a kick or punt return is based on the number of times they scored in real life as a percentage. So what that means is that if a player, let's say they returned a total of 15 kicks or 20 kicks, let's say, for the season, which isn't a lot. Let's say they're the secondary kick returner. But let's say they had 2 touchdowns. Well, I mean, that's going to be 10%. That's going to be 10% of whatever that number that I think it was 20 I mentioned. 20. That's 10%. That's actually a pretty high percentage. And you're probably going to see way more kickoff returns for touchdown because in the simulation they might return the ball more than 20 times. Maybe they have 50 returns. So now instead of 2 touchdowns, maybe they ended up with like 5, 6, 7, whatever. And that seems to be the case across the board. And I think with that rating, you kind of have to temper it down a little bit depending on how many returns that player actually had. So maybe someone who did return the ball 50 times, maybe you do rate them honestly according to how many times they reach the end zone. But if it's a player that's maybe the secondary kick returner or punt returner, maybe you handicap them a bit, and that's something I did not do in '67. So um, anyway, just kind of food for thought. If you're using the '67 season, maybe take a look at those ratings for the kick and punt returners, and maybe scale those back a little bit. That's something I'm definitely going to do when this is done. And I mentioned the rule set. I guess there's no way. I don't think there's a way to check that in the in game. See what the rule set is. I think you have to wait. Yeah, I don't think there's a way to do that. Yeah, you can look at stats. I'll try one more thing here. Sim options. Was there anything there? Nope. Okay. All right. Clem Daniels is out, at least briefly. So right now it's 13-0 Bears. Bears. That's the next game. 13-0 Raiders. And I seem to be running out of space. That's weird. Okay. Huge play. All right, the Jets might be back in the ball game. 61-yard run by Bill Mathis. Okay. I haven't been paying attention. I seem to be running out of disk space here on my C drive. And this video probably isn't helping because I'm sure this is saving onto my C drive. So I'll have to take a look at that. All right, 2-minute warning before halftime. We got a close ball game, 13-7. What looked like earlier, like the Raiders were going to kind of run away with it. There's a big run by LaMonica. Big first down, 17-yard scramble, out of bounds. But the Jets are within a score, and there's a big sack. Philbin again gets to LaMonica. And that could be a drive killer. Raiders are hurrying to the line, try to save some time. He finds Wells for 9 yards. That's going to set up a third down. 7. They're trying to save some time here, not use their timeouts. And a big play to Bill Miller. So first down, a 17-yard strike, out of bounds, stopping the clock. 1:04 to go. They're going to keep firing down the field. Wells again. This time for 15. And they're now set up with a first and goal. Some of these Raider guys are just getting hurt here. Sure, the field conditions don't help. And there's a touchdown. Clem Daniels, 4 yards from Daryl LaMonica. LaMonica, I think that's his second touchdown pass of the game. Raiders now have a 19-7 lead. Here's Blanda to make it 20-7. 20-7 Raiders. like the Jets are going to play conservative here and go to the locker room down by 13. So the fans in Shea Stadium probably can't be too happy with that. Didn't really get a chance to look at the stats there. So let's take a look at that here in just a second. Let's see. So yeah, I mean domination all the way around. 232 to 122 in total offense. It's all been passing yards. Daryl LaMonica, 13 to 21. 167 yards passing. They're doing it on the ground too, almost 5 yards a carry. Although the Jets are doing pretty well in their run game as well. They probably should continue to stick with that. But they are down by 2 scores. And 13 first downs to 4 for the Jets. Time of possession, pretty well ahead there too. Third down conversions, they've converted half of them. The Raiders have. The Jets only 20%. So things looking pretty good here for the Raiders at halftime. So with that, I'll go ahead and skip the kickoff because we just saw that. We'll see what the Jets can do. They get the ball in the first half. Not off to a good start with a false start. Things not going their way. The Jets are defending AFL champions in this ball game. Something I didn't mention before. I did talk about the first Super Bowl prior season between them and the Cowboys. It's a really close game. As close as you can get because it went into overtime. See how this season turns out. But right now, it's not looking good for the Jets to get back there. Another flag. Okay, 3rd and 7 for the Jets. So this should be a passing play. Oh, they're going to keep it on the ground. They're playing conservative. And I think I would imagine the crowd would be getting a little bit restless. But they did pin the Raiders deep, so let's see what happens now. I don't know why there's no audio. That's a strange one. It's not letting me load the other. All right, Jets with another chance here. Change audio. Let's see if it lets me do that. No, still doesn't. Still nothing. Not getting any audio. Very strange. Okay. Well. Oh, Namath throws the interception. McClowan returns it to the 37. That was a huge play, especially if it results in points here for the Raiders. They're already up by 13. And a penalty on the Jets, offside, so it's now 1st and 5. Raiders keep it on the ground. No reason to take too many risks here. Up by 13. All right, well, they're going to have a 3rd and 6 after that loss of yards. They keep it a screen pass to Cannon. He comes up short of the 1st down. So let's see if they go for it. No, they're going to try the field goal. And he's off to the left. He missed it. So that's a big miss. That would have made it a 3-score game. Now, Jets are still in it, but they got to get something going here. Still a lot of time left to play, but they got to get something going. Smolinski, 1 yard. So now we're going to have a 3rd down, 3rd and 2. Name it to throw, and he's sacked. Dan Connors comes up the middle in the blitz, takes him down. So now it's 4th and 7. Raiders should get the ball back. There's a flag on the play. It looks like running into the kicker. Let's see what happens there. It's roughing the kicker. A 15-yard penalty, so a huge break for the Jets. Big mistake for the Raiders. So the Jets have the ball at the 38 with another opportunity here to get something going. Let's see what they do with it. So Lamons, well, I mentioned he was hurt coming into the game. He goes out again. Boozer gets some yards off the left tackle, but it's going to set up a 3rd and 7. They haven't been doing too well on 3rd downs. Over the middle, incomplete. Intended for Sharon. So kind of a disappointing day here for the Jets so far on offense. They're not getting it done. The Raiders have an answer for pretty much everything the Jets have been throwing at them. Big play to Blendikov. Blendikov's having a big day. Well, Lamons is coming back in for the Jets when they get back on offense. Well, nobody in the vicinity of that pass. I don't know what was going on there with LaMonica, but dangerous throw. And it's now 3rd and long. It's back to throw. He misses his receiver. That was Larry Todd out there on the left flank, and he missed him. So it's now 4th down. Eyeshide in to kick it. See if they can pin the Jets deep. And they do. Nice kick. 48 yards out of bounds. It's going to be inside the 10-yard line where the Jets are going to start at the 5. Okay. They come out firing, but incomplete. Intended for Lemons. Bird there to break it up. Again, the Jets just don't have any answers right now. Big play to Lamons over the middle for a 1st down, so maybe that'll get things going. The one player that's been relatively silent has been George Sauer. I think he's had 1 reception. I'll have to look at that, but He's usually their big play guy, and he's been noticeably absent. Let's see where. Let's see. Namath is 8 of 20. Not good. Yeah, Sauer has that one catch for 9 yards. Maynard has 2 catches for 35. It's been mainly Lemons they've been throwing to. So let's see. That was intended for Lemons, incomplete. I think Namath's going to need to start focusing on his wideouts. There's a draw play, breaks it to the right. Mathis gets 5 yards. That's not too bad. So it makes third down a little bit more manageable here. 3rd and 5. Over the middle, incomplete. Intended for Bake Turner. So another 4th down for the Jets. Curly Johnson getting a lot of work today. You don't ever want to see your punter having to kick this many times, especially in a big game like this. Counting down to the end of the 3rd quarter. The Raiders maintaining a 13-point lead. And that pass is picked off. Jim Hudson intercepts LaMonica, so that's a big break for the Jets and really something they needed to have happen. Because now they're set up with pretty good field position if they can make something happen. They haven't been able to do much yet. They had the one touchdown. But we go to the 4th quarter now. They're down 13. They've had a total of 8 first downs, 177 total offensive yards. And here's Namath out to the left. Incomplete, intended for Maynard. 3rd and 9. Throws it out in the flat, and he misses his man, Smolinski. So the Jets get the interception. They get the big turnover, and they're unable to take advantage. And Johnson gets a good punt, pins the Raiders down inside the 10. The Raiders just need to take more time off the clock. The Jets are running out of time. It was a different game back in '67. Really back in the '50s, '60s, and '70s. Teams didn't, it's not like today where teams can come from behind. They can be down 3 touchdowns and come back in a matter of minutes. Teams back then didn't have that same quick strike capability. So this is going to be tough. They got good field position again. 1st and 10. They're close to midfield. Yeah, so they're being served some really good opportunities here to get back into this game. That was a pass intended for Sauer. The Raiders have really clamped down on those Jet receivers. And here's a big play to Matt Snell on a draw for 13 yards. That's a 1st down. And there's Sauer. Gets a big play. All right, so George Sauer, 31 yards from Namath. And it sets up a 1st and goal. Looks like Maynard's leaving the game. Billy Joe is going to come in for him. And 1st and goal, they're going to keep it on the ground to Boozer. Off right tackle for 3 yards. 2nd and goal. Namath rolls to his right and finds Lemons for the touchdown. There is a flag. Let's see what the penalty is. Roughing the passer, and that will be enforced on the kickoff. So huge play for the Jets. They're back in the game now, and this is a big extra point. And it's through. So Jim Turner gets the extra point, and we now have a 6-point game. So it's anyone's, and there's a lot of time left. So the Raiders are going to probably need to get out of that conservative mode themselves and rely on their strengths. All right, so they keep it on the ground. Clem Daniels for 2, second and 8. Flag on the play there. Offsides on the Jets, so the Raiders get a break. So 2nd and 3. They keep it on the ground to Hagberg, and he's got the first down. So move the chains. It's time to Banaszak, the right side for 2. They're playing it conservative, but it's working because they're getting yards down the field, and they're taking time off the clock. Now it's 3rd and 3, though. They got to make this. And they do. Bill Miller, 6 yards and a first down, big first down. The clock continues to tick. No gain on that play. Incomplete, intended for Bolitnikov. So now it's 3rd and 10. Here's a big play. Big down for both teams. They keep it conservative, and they get away with it. Hubert Dixon finds a seam, gets through for a 23-yard gain, and a first down for Oakland. Huge play. What a risky call, but it works. Everybody was calling pass, and they get away with it. And there's a flea flicker to Cannon, and that's a touchdown. Right there, the Raiders go for gold. And that may be the kill shot for this game. They're going to go ahead and kick the extra point. I think they would probably go for 2 if I had that rule sets turned on, so that was my fault. Again, I'm hoping that doesn't become a factor in this game. Nice return by Christie. So again, the Jets have pretty decent field position if they can make something happen. Quick pass to Maynard, who's back in the game. And they're in hurry up mode here, and they have a big pass here. Sauer, the first down. So he goes to Maynard and then Sauer. Those two great receivers for the Jets. Oh my goodness. Willie Brown gets the interception. And you can hear a pin drop at Shea Stadium. Well, you can hear a pin drop anyway because the sound doesn't work. You know what I mean. All right. So the Raiders now pretty good shape. Ahead comfortably by 2 scores. Or less than 5 minutes to go. They have a 3rd and 7 here. Let's see what happens. They are going to throw it. Monica's going to scramble, and he's almost going to get the first down, but he comes up just short. So 4th and 1, I would imagine they're going to punt here, and they are. But they have an opportunity here to pin the Jets pretty deep if they can. There we go, yep. So Eisheid's punt, 41 yards out of bounds, close to around the 10-yard line there. Looks like it's just shy of the 10. So the Jets now, and they take the sack. Connor's coming up the middle. It's the second time he's done that today. Gets the sack on Namath. Jets in the hurry-up mode. Time is running. Namath throws it down the field, and he finds Lamons. Lamons having a big day for a guy coming back from injury. All right, so the Jets are moving the ball. Jets are moving the ball here. 2-minute warning. Back to throw is Namath. Incomplete. So time is running out on the Jets. He gets run out of bounds. 3rd and long now. Lamons again. Lamons has been a surefire target for Namath in this game. All the Jets can hope for here is to get a touchdown and hope for a successful onside kick. But that's not going to work there. So they get sacked. Lassiter comes up the middle and gets him. 3rd and long. Down less than a minute now. And he goes down again. Dan Birdwell gets him. And now it's 4th down. And at this point, the Jets might as well just try to go for the end zone. Nope, incomplete. That's going to do it. The Raiders are going to take over. 48 seconds. Jets only have 2 timeouts. I assume they're going to take those here. LaMonica downs the ball. They take their second timeout. LaMonica's going to take a knee again. And I assume on 3rd down he's going to take a knee, and that's going to do it. So the Oakland Raiders have defeated the New York Jets 27-14. Darryl LaMonica is the star of the game for the Raiders, 19 of 36. He did have a pick, but he threw 3 touchdowns, 230 yards. He actually ran the ball as well for 33 yards and had some critical scrambles there. 3 first downs. So big game for him in the foul weather in New York. Let's look at the stats real quick. 18-17 on first downs. Not a big edge there, but in yards, it's pretty even as well. Looks like the Jets really did make up in the second half some ground. But I think in terms of quarterbacking and efficiency, LaMonica clearly outshined Namath overall, completing over half his throws versus only 43% pass completion for Namath. Namath had 3 picks. That obviously was a big factor, probably the biggest factor. The other factor too, just the Jets just couldn't get it done on 3rd down. Although the Raiders started out, they were almost 50% on 3rd downs, just a little bit less than 40%. Not great either, which is why the game was low scoring for most of the way. But then the Raiders were able to pull away in the 4th quarter. So there you go. Let's look at some individual stats. We'll start with passing. Again, LaMonica, big day. 230 yards passing, 19 to 36, 3 touchdowns and 1 pick. Um, Namath got off to a horrible start, but he did do a lot better towards the end of the game. 16 to 37, 210 yards, but the 3 picks, just those are backbreakers. Rushing, um, let's see, 73 yards was the top rusher for the Jets was Bill Mathis. For the Raiders, it was Hewitt Dixon. Receiving yards and catches, Fred Biletnikoff looks like he had 7 receptions, 76 yards. He had the touchdown early on. Lamons was the primary target for the Jets. Maynard and Sauer really weren't factors at all. The way I think the Jets would have needed them to be if they were going to be successful in this game. I go to defense. I know Philbin had 2 sacks for the Jets. Biggs had 1. He had the interception by Jim Hudson, who also led the team in tackles. For the Raiders, it was Roger Byrd leading the team in tackles. A lot of sacks on Namath. Namath really got battered. Total of 6 sacks, 2 from Lassiter, 2 from Connors, and then Keating and Birdwell each had 1. And then the 3 picks, 2 by Willie Brown. Those were big interceptions when it looked like the Jets were starting to get some things going. So didn't turn out too well there for them. So that's it for the AFL Championship game. The Raiders will go on to represent the AFL in Super Bowl II at the Orange Bowl in Miami. They will be the designated home team, so they will be wearing their black jerseys. They will face either the Redskins or the Bears. I'll play that game next, and we'll see how that matchup turns out. So let's look at the bracket real quick. You can see there, where each team was, what happened a week ago, how the Redskins and Bears got to the NFL title game, and they're going to play now to see who plays the Raiders. So, all right. Well, sorry for the technical difficulties. This is my first time doing this. Hopefully, it turned out okay. Appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll do this game next. Take care. Thanks, everyone.